Hey everybody, how's it going? Luke Marino here, East Partnership. Just wanted to take a moment this afternoon to talk a little bit about maintenance task analysis and a couple of other things that are going on. People are gearing up for the holiday weekend here in the United States. We've got Independence Day being celebrated, and our Canadian counterparts should be celebrating, I believe, tomorrow, right? Either that or Friday. When's the first? I should probably know these things. Let's see. Tomorrow. There you go. Um, yeah, I just wanted to bring this session to you this week to kind of expose a little bit more about the value of a maintenance task analysis. And you'll hear me talk about MTAs quite frequently on webinars, podcasts, general conversations on LinkedIn, and a couple of other formats. But the real point of today's discussion was to dive a little bit more into the value that it presents your team, your organization. Because to me, you can have a really cool thing in theory. You can even have a really cool thing in practice. But if that really cool thing doesn't deliver value to you or your organization, people probably aren't going to want to do it. We don't just go to work for fun. I mean, some people do. Some of it is fun, but it's not the only reason we go. It's just to do things we don't do elsewhere. But when you employ certain types of work like maintenance task analysis, there's a good bit of hard work that goes into it, and so you're really looking at an investment, right? You're looking at investing time in performing an activity, and you want to make sure you get a return on that investment, or it's going to be really hard to get people, especially senior people in your organization, to dedicate resources to that effort, including people's time, money, the whole deal. So, as always, this session is brought to you by East Partnership, where we actually teach a course on maintenance task analysis. It is an on-demand course. It's taught by myself, and I do maintenance task analysis consulting as well. Do it via Zoom so that I can maintain my normalcy here with or without COVID. And much of what we're doing in that coursework is laying the foundation for a maintenance task analysis and portraying in the first lesson some of these values we'll talk about today. So a little bit of a primer for that material, if you will. And in that class, we actually demonstrate an MTA form, an MTA analysis, talk about exactly what to do to perform the MTA, which is different than if you look into the standards that are out there. They don't really express a lot about how to do something. They talk about it theoretically, conceptually. They talk about what you should include, but they don't actually give you a form and tell you, this is what type of analyst you should select, and this is what the process should look like, and here's all the data you should be asking for and how you should view it. And in the end, what are you going to do with it, right? And that's really what the course outlines for you. And if you're not the type of person that likes on-demand courses, or if you just want some one-on-one or even team consulting in regards to maintenance task analysis, then you know where to find me. You can always come visit us at eastpartnership.org and get a little bit smarter on it. Okay, now let's talk about the topic at hand. So maintenance task analysis is one of the things that I'm super fond of because it's kind of like what you really want analysis to be, right? When people start talking about different forms of analysis, you're engaged, you're thinking, you're curious about what they're talking about, but immediately you're looking for, how is this applicable to me? Why would I want to do this? Is this something that could benefit my organization, my team, my program, me? Is this something that we're missing, right? Are we already satisfying these functions through other processes or other analysis or other types of work in our organization? It's hard for us to capture some of that if we're not familiar with it, right? What exactly we're trying to compare it to. So I was hoping to clarify a little bit of that in today's discussion. So when we perform a maintenance task analysis, what we're really looking to do is take a prescribed maintenance activity, right? Maybe something that we discovered in a FMEA or a FMICA as a maintenance need for either a newly designed or a currently owned piece of equipment or an asset. And we want to say, okay, there is a trigger for maintenance activity. What is it going to take to perform that maintenance activity? What do we have to do to execute this maintenance? Now, this is a little different than the traditional planning and scheduling approach. Planning and scheduling is super important. It's something that you should definitely be doing in your organization. However, what you plan and how that plan is going to unfold is supported by a maintenance task analysis. So if you're a planner, this is a really cool thing for you to learn about. And the reason for that is we're going to take this need for maintenance and we're going to decompose it. So we've got a process prescribed to us. Let's say it's change the oil in a piece of equipment, right? Let's say it's a diesel engine. I always like to use diesel engines as an example. And we're going to perform an oil change, and it's a preventive maintenance action. And you've never done an oil change on this piece of equipment. And most people would say, well, an oil change is a pretty common activity. We don't really need to overthink this. That's true. But sometimes you get a very complex asset that is unlike any other asset you've had before, and it's not quite that simple. So I'm just going to use this as an example, not saying that changing the oil on an engine would require an MTA at every turn. I just want to give you something familiar, right? An activity that you would be familiar with. And you would say, okay, I need to decompose this procedure, and I need to understand what the step-by-step procedure is to perform the maintenance task analysis. So I'm going to use, or to perform the maintenance activity. So I'm going to use the MTA to do that. And we're also going to try and figure out every tool that's needed and every supply that's needed and the appropriate skill level of our technicians that's required to perform the activity. And how many of those technicians, right? And this is a really simple thing to do for a basic maintenance activity like changing oil. Where it starts to get more complex is when you start looking at more complex maintenance activities. Maybe something like a top-end overhaul on that same engine, where you're going to remove all the cylinder heads and the camshaft, and maybe even pull power packs. And you're going to perform valve work, and you're potentially going to rebuild cylinder heads, or it's just a swap and replace. Maybe removing turbochargers, inspecting, all that stuff. We're going to do a whole top end on this engine. Could be a very complex procedure with many different technicians involved with various levels of proficiency. We may have a few basic technicians on hand. We may even have a few laborers on hand to help us bring resources to and from the site. And we will have some advanced technicians on site as well to be the brains of the operation and make sure that we're doing this in accordance with best practices and prescribed activities. So the maintenance task analysis will confirm what is required to properly perform that activity. We'll jump in there and create or capture and then produce the step-by-step procedures. We'll have documented every resource that's needed. We'll have documented the manpower requirements. We'll even document what training is required to get our crew proficient at that activity. That'll inform other decisions. Do we need to provide training to our crew? Do we need to not worry about training our crew because we're going to hire a subcontractor to do this work because of the level of complexity, or that it's just beyond our resources or capabilities, whatever the case may be? You only know these things because you decompose the activity and you understand the activity. You don't have to guess. You've actually done the analysis to figure it out. That's very powerful knowledge to have, right? Especially when you start thinking about this in aggregate. Meaning we're not just looking at one maintenance activity, we're looking at all the maintenance activities for this piece of equipment as far as they are either prescribed by OEM or developed by our own team. So a lot going on here, and it seems pretty apparent to some people that this would be a valuable exercise, but other people are doubtful, and they say, well, I don't think it should really be that hard. I mean, we've got people that do maintenance. We've got people that have been doing this type of stuff for decades. Can't they just figure it out? Sure. Those would be prime people to put on the team that performs the analysis. You're going to want to perform the analysis with the appropriate level of technicians so that you can capture the duration that it takes for that technician with that level of proficiency and experience to perform the activity in the operating context of the asset, meaning in the actual environment in which the maintenance is going to take place. So there's an extreme amount of value there. Why? Because I'm now understanding how much equipment downtime I should predict for that activity. This is a little different than if you receive, just open check, assume that the OEM's recommendation is going to be accurate. In the case of the oil change, let's say the OEM says this should take you 30, 45 minutes. Let's just say 45 minutes for the sake of, let's do even better. Let's say it's an hour for the sake of nice round numbers and durations. 1 hour to perform the oil change from securing the equipment, tagging it out, having it offline, cooling it, draining it, changing the oil, inspecting the oil, checking the level, op test, removal of tags, and off you go. 1 hour, pretty quick, right? So let's just get this done. And we're talking about a pretty large engine here. Well, when your original equipment manufacturer designed that maintenance activity, they may have done this in a very controlled setting, in a lab, not in the plant that you operate or maintain, not in the ship that you operate or maintain, where access to the components of the engine, the resources you need, and the procedures that you need in place to perform the activity are captured, right? They're not captured in the OEM's facility. Unless the OEM designed this piece of equipment specifically for you and did the analysis specifically for you and considered your operating context. So there's one huge value of the MTA, is that you will have a more accurate prediction of how long this should take based on the environmental context and operating context of your asset. You will also understand the duration of the task in relation to the workload of the remainder of your team, right? So you have a very accurate capture of how long this task should take. In fact, you will have a very accurate capture to this second of how long each step took of the maintenance activity. So every one of the steps that it took to perform the oil change were captured by your analyst with a stopwatch and accounted for. Yes. And in aggregate, you now have a very accurate understanding of the duration of the task, right? How long it's going to take to perform the total maintenance. So we have a very accurate prediction of the downtime for the equipment. We have a very accurate prediction for the amount of time that this resource will be engaged in performing the asset, these manpower estimates. We will also have a very accurate capture of the exact amount of resources that are going to be needed for supplies and consumables to perform the maintenance activity, and whether the procedure that was in the manufacturer's tech pub was detailed enough to really support us estimating properly the impact of the maintenance on our organization. So just to kind of recap up to this point, we have very accurate accountability for the duration of the task, which can be equated to helping us estimate downtime for the equipment. We have very accurate capture of the resources that are going to be required and expended, meaning supplies and consumables. We have a very accurate understanding of the level of proficiency and expertise required by each technician on site. We'll have an accurate account for the number of technicians that need to be doing this. And we'll also have captured all of the data. Now, why is that valuable? Outside of scheduling implications, I now have a running list of everything I'm going to need to supply this maintenance activity. So I have now informed my supply chain on site of what my maintenance demand is going to be for particular components, whether it be the oil itself, a gasket, the consumables like rags and filters and all this other stuff. We'll have an accurate accountability for it. This gets really important the more complex the maintenance activity is. So if you move into a larger maintenance activity like that top end overhaul I was talking about, there's going to be a whole lot of money and parts involved in the execution of a top end overhaul on an engine. Well, that increases the risk that you will not have the parts that you need, or that you will not have an accurate estimation of how much those parts will cost. And instead of having to start from scratch with estimating this every time, the maintenance task analysis can be kept up to date, and you can use that to update your supply chain. You can use it to update your training program. You can use it to update your perceived on-hand stores. So this is really valuable for maintenance planning and scheduling. Now, moving to a more strategic perspective on value. Let's think about this from a management perspective. If I'm trying to justify budgets, and I'm trying to justify increased billets or positions to support my department, or I need to at least communicate current status, then I need to have accurate accountability, both for what I am expending and what I'm supposed to be expending, right? So the baseline that you're spending against was established by what? If it's just off of what you spent last year, that's not a very good baseline. It's experiential, I get it. It was enough to get you through last year, I get it. But what was it supposed to be? What should it be should you perform each of your activities as prescribed? If you expend at a minimum what you're supposed to expend for each maintenance activity, and this is without guessing, you can have an accurate accountability, because once you take all of these individual maintenance task analyses and you aggregate them, you'll know exactly what the prescribed cost of maintenance is for that asset, including the duration of the tasks. You can use those same MTA results to assign values to each of the supplies, to the labor hours, to all those things. This is great for budgeting and estimating. So from a management perspective, I like having that bottom-up estimation of what these activities should cost, not just what we expended before. Now, there are probably some people out there saying, dude, I get it, that's nice, but really, is that necessary? Well, let me give you a little bit of anecdotal treatment here. When I was performing my level of repair analysis for the Coast Guard on a diesel engine, part of it is extracting data from maintenance tasks and using that to estimate the costs of activities, right? So I need all that maintenance task analysis data to inform the level of repair analysis. So I go out and I get in touch with the senior maintenance team and this regional depot maintenance facility. And I said, hey, I need all of your performance on these engines in the last year. And I'm going to look at each of the maintenance tasks that you've performed. And I'm going to see how much time it took for you to perform them. I wasn't looking at the cost of supplies and consumables at this point. I was just looking at the cost of the actual time, right? The dedication of time, the duration of performance for each iteration of these maintenance tasks. And so each of these maintenance tasks that were performed on this engine were performed multiple times during that year, because we had 6, 7, 8 ships. Each of them had 2 engines. You would do valve adjustment on one engine once a year, or maybe 3 times a year. But for each time that they performed it on all of those engines, they were documenting the time that it took for them to do it. Well, wouldn't you know it, it was extremely unstable. When we captured the time on deck that it took to do the maintenance, what we found was the more aged the assets were, the more interferences and uncontrollable variables you were going to introduce to your estimates, because things are old. Or in this ship, some things are in the way, and on this other class, they're not. And so the duration between one platform and another was different for different reasons. Something as simple as removing an exhaust bolt, a manifold bolt from the back of a cylinder head, became really complex when the bolt didn't want to come out, and when you forced it out, the head broke off, and now you have to extract an exhaust head bolt that's seized in a cylinder head. Right? This is not in the OEM's predicted maintenance, and you're not going to find it predicted by the OEM. You're going to find it when you're out there performing maintenance, and you're going to capture it. It took us this long to do this, right? Some of those things you're never going to be able to control. But the moral of the story is, when I actually looked at what we did versus what we thought we were going to do, because we'd never actually analyzed the tasks that captured all this stuff, what we found was some of these engines had really detailed descriptions of maintenance tasks from the original equipment manufacturer. Others were woefully inadequate. Some were very close to the prescribed maintenance period, right? The duration of the maintenance task. Others were 3 times the predicted maintenance duration. And it was real easy to find out that when we had to do a sensitivity analysis to see how wild our estimates could be, that we didn't have to look very far, that the duration of the task was the most unstable variable in all of our estimates. And we were looking at the duration of tasks, we were looking at the cost of supplies and consumables. The maintenance technician level The capability level, those stayed constant. You needed one master mechanic and four journeymen or three journeymen, or whatever the case may be, and that stayed consistent. But the actual time it took to perform the maintenance tasks, that varied considerably. We didn't come to that assumption just based off of experiencing this. I mean, we were living in it, but we had never captured that data and then looked at it and said, "Oh, look, this is our reality. We have it captured. We can look at it. Now we can really make some educated decisions about what we're doing here." Right? So maintenance task analysis helped us form a baseline with which we should be pivoting, right? Whether we're doing it faster than we should be, which was not usually the case at all, or we could be up to 3 times as long as it should be, right? Now, there's some things we don't control that influence the maintenance task analysis and its outputs, like using that data for costing certain consumables, like or supplies like oil, for example. I don't get to control OPEC and how much the price of a gallon of oil is tomorrow. I don't get to control that. I also don't get to control whether my supplier is going to stop producing that part or go out of business or those types of things. We can do things to mitigate or try and capture those risks, but I don't get to control them necessarily to the same degree that I can control my own estimates regarding things that happen within my own facilities, right? So if I have to provide my people training, I can get smart and understand how much of that training and who needs it. If I need to figure out how long that equipment needs to be down, I can perform the maintenance task analysis and I can figure out exactly how long it should be down. Should we do this properly? Because we don't just estimate based off of what we read in a book when we perform a maintenance task analysis. This is the key. You actually perform the task. That's the analysis, is you're performing the task and capturing all of this and recording it and documenting it, and capturing it and storing it, and using that data to then inform decision making and estimates and those types of things. So you see the difference there? I mean, it's a subtle difference between, well, we've done this maintenance 10, 15 times before. Yeah, but did you ever capture it by the second each step? No. And maybe you have, but maybe you're not doing it and using that data because you've never stored it and intending to use it for these types of things. So big value points for MTA to a maintenance organization. It's one of the big reasons why we do this with newly designed pieces of equipment, is because there is no documented capture. And now we're capturing that for the first time. So we understand how long it's going to take and whether our technicians are trained for this, or maybe they're trained, but they're not experienced, or maybe they once were trained and once were experienced, but that skill is atrophied because it's been 5, 10 years since they touched that piece of equipment or a similar piece of equipment or performed that particular task, right? I mean, if I were to go do an engine overhaul on an Alco now, I'd be way slower than I would have been 15 years ago. Or a Cat D398, which I used to be able to walk around those Caterpillars with my eyes closed. Today, I would still be able to perform the task. It would just take me a little bit longer, right? Because I'm out of practice. And I'm not going to beat myself up over that. I'm just going to say it matters. Now, it matters more if I'm paying. Yeah, and there's a big difference. If I'm paying for that downtime, if I'm losing profit or revenue due to that downtime, this is really important, right? This is the stuff that drives decisions at the top. So if you're looking for ways to capture data and justify future resourcing, MTA is a very powerful way to do that. And I don't want to go too much further into it because you can only talk about MTA so much before you start to glaze over, and I'm sure you guys might be there now. But I do want to just pass it. I think it's very much worth doing. It's not like rocket science, but it is very detailed. It's intuitive. You'll want to keep doing it once you've done it. It's very informative, and it starts to build a data that respects, or a culture that respects data, right? We're not just depending on the piece of equipment to report data to us in some CMMS or in some CBM Plus software package or whatever the case may be. We're not just waiting for sensors to do their job. We're actually performing activities and recording our own performance and learning about our own people. And let's say you've never really gotten down on the deck plates with your technicians and worked with them. This is a really good excuse for you to pick up the clipboard and go down there and help with analysis. Say, hey, look, I want to get smarter on what you guys do, but I also want to help you by having better captured what you're doing and how you're going to do it. Let's go through this step by step together. You guys knock this out of the park. Everyone loves to show you what they've got for skills and knowledge. They love to show you what they are capable of. And this is one way you can really kind of build some team building into that process while improving what the technicians are going to receive, improving the support structure around your maintenance program, improve your maintenance programming, improve your planning and scheduling activities, and improve the resourcing for your folks. There's nothing worse than going into the tech pub, making sense of what you can in the technical publication that the OEM provides you, and then you go out there to perform the maintenance and you find that they did not tell you about X, Y, Z. They didn't give you an accurate accountability for consumables or even some of the safety steps, because safety is a part of what we capture in the MTA. All of this stuff needs to be, respected, is kind of my point. And if you want to show that you're a professional, you'll do the analysis and prove it. Okay. And that's my big stomp on MTA. Now, I would like to close with a few comments. As you may or may not be aware, over at East Partnership, we are running a bunch of sales on our coursework, and I'm talking like a big sale on all of our coursework that is resident and hosted on our site at eastpartnership.org. So you can receive up to 50% off on all of our lubrication courses, which are taught by Sonia Mathura of Strategic Reliability, right? I mean, dude, getting Sonia to teach your folks lubrication is awesome, right? She's the best. Why wouldn't you want her as your instructor, right? And then we have Suzanne Grieman and Grieman Asset Management Academy teaching Asset Management 101, which is an introduction to asset management, and AM 103, which is our asset information management course. And that is just a tremendous set of courses in asset management. Suzanne is amazing. Her courses are top-notch, very professional. Everything's on demand that I've mentioned thus far. And of course, we bundle the MTA and LoRa courses. You can buy all of these things individually, or you can buy them in bundles to try and save a little more money. But the 50% off is on all of the lubrication courses, and the 25% off is on all of the asset management and life cycle management courses. Now, cherry on top is that Jesus Safante, our resident RCM guru, has offered the 25% discount as well on his upcoming courses in August in RCM Basic, right? So this is a very comprehensive RCM course, which, contributes to your level 1 certification, is recognized by IRCC, also has certification through Conscious Reliability, and is a very, very comprehensive RCM course. It's amazing. And wouldn't you know it, we are lucky to have Jesus deliver it in both English and Spanish. Yes. And so the RCM course is a hybrid. It's some online, some self-study, and then weekly meetings with Jesus for him to further expand on core lessons, really dive into the material and help drill in those fundamentals, test you. Every one of these courses has some level of interactive nature in the coursework. And of course, many of these courses come with things like forms and examples that you could use to build your own resources at your organization. So, those are gateways to consulting as well. And we're always happy to help you in any way that you would see fit. We just love what we do. We're not in this to get, you'll notice that we're not charging, through the nose for our coursework. That's because we just genuinely want to make the industry better. And we love what we do and what we're talking about. So you can follow us here on LinkedIn at East Partnership. This side right there, right? You can follow us on YouTube. And please don't forget to subscribe no matter where you're watching. And please, please, please come back, because we've got some great episodes coming up. I've got Jesus Safante coming up to talk about Weibull analysis. We've got Rob from Rob's Reliability coming to talk to us, Mr. Rob K. He's going to talk to us about all that he's learned in the last year of running the Leadership Launchpad program, which is just amazing. So, Rob is just a fantastic interview every single time. And we've got much, much more. I'm sure we're going to have Suzanne back here very soon. And we're just blessed to have such great people in our family. So join us, become part of the group, and we will see you very soon. Keep your eye on LinkedIn for the next live announcement. Okay, everyone, have an amazing week and weekend. Be safe over the holidays. Your independence is a blessing. We love you all. Be good humans to each other.